Hello everyone, how are you? I am Luciana. This is my YouTube channel 24 horses per second, and in today's video I have another lighting breakdown. In this case is a still life 3D render. For this render I used only 5 lights and I worked on Blender, but you can use any 3D software. I will show you my whole process on how I came to the final look, from the broad ideas to the references, how I sketch the lighting I have in mind, and then how I translate those ideas to a 3D lighting setup. I think this render looks pretty decent, and it's actually my third finished render I made since I started learning Blender, so make sure to stick around until the end of the video because I'll be sharing some tips to achieve good renders even if you are a beginner. First, let's start with the references. This is so important because references help you to have a strong and clear direction. If you think you have the idea in your head and you don't need references, you will probably lose your mind a little bit trying to achieve what you are imagining. So these are my references, and basically what I wanted was a beam light in the background wall, moody lighting, middle key minor, that means low light with some highlights, earth tones, green, brown, yellow tones for the objects. I wanted the object to be in this color scheme. And now with these ideas, I can go to my render that has the default lighting and I can scribble the shapes I want my light to make. These objects already have these earth tones I wanted, so this is just for the lighting. This will be like blocking light or making a draft, kind of like when you block out a scene with primitives or simple shapes. So I said I wanted some dim light, a light beam which is kind of like a cone shape on the background, some shadows on the bottles to create volume and so the image doesn't look flat, and also some shadows on the barrel because I don't want it to be important in this scene. I want the attention to go on this part of the image. You could also use colors depending on the color of the light you already have in mind. And now with this you can start thinking what kind of light you will use and where to put them. It's pretty clear that I will need a spotlight coming from this direction to achieve a light beam. Then from the rest of the scene I will probably need a sun or pretty diffuse large light coming from this side to achieve a shadow on this side. I feel like this kind of approach of drawing some shapes and then thinking where the lights will be positioned is good for beginners or for people who struggle with lighting, and it's better than trying a bunch of lights without getting anywhere. So think about the shapes you want the light to make, where you want the highlights and the shadows, and where you want the light to come from and what color that light will have. First, as always, you can see here the size of the objects, so if you want to replicate this light setup on your own models and they happen to be bigger or smaller, you will probably need bigger or smaller lights. And these are the spider webs. I'm gonna hide them so they don't get in the way. My color management is set to Filmic. In case you haven't seen my other video about lighting, you should watch it by the way. I arranged this workspace so you can see a lot of things at the same time. In the outliner window you will see which light I'm showing or hiding. They are named according to what kind of light they are. Then you will be able to see the values, the type of light in the properties window. In the shader editor you will see the nodes of my lights because I used the black body node and I chose different values according to how warm or cool I wanted the lights to be. In the viewport in solid mode I will show you the placement of each light, and of course in the viewport in render mode you will see how each light affects the scene. First I'll show each light individually. To start I put a basis light that hits the whole scene. This is a really cool light. As you can see, I might have overdone it with the number in the black body node, And the reason why I chose a cool basis for the light is because the color of the objects are on the warm side already, and because I knew that my other lights were going to be warmer. So by putting a cool light in the whole scene, I will have some balance between all these warm tones. You could choose all warm lights on warm objects, but that just wasn't what I wanted in this case. Second, a sun. I chose an angle that gave me some shadows on the bottles, and basically with this light I was choosing the lighting ratio and how harsh or soft those shadows would be depending on the angle. Now this is not a light, but it's really important to the overall look. This is a flag, so that sun wasn't hitting so much on the barrel. Usually just putting the lights is not enough, so like in live action you need to control lights with flags, which is just a plane and you just move it until you like the result. An area light used as a background light, not as warm as the previous light and pretty flat looking to not generate shadows on the background. And now to make an effect in the wall, a light beam shape, I used 3 spotlights because with only one I couldn't make the exact shape I wanted. Now let's add each light: the blue basis, the sun, the flag, the background light, the background spot number 2, and background spot number 3. And there you have it. Then in post-production I did some minor changes, some dodge and burn in the bottle because I didn't like those shadows, brightness and contrast, hue and saturation, some grain, film dust, and that's it. Remember, the idea is not to copy exactly what I do, but to learn the overall technique. Like I said in the intro, this is actually my third 3D render I think I did since I started learning 3D. And modeling is definitely my struggle, and because of that I couldn't finish most projects at first, and I had ideas that were too complex for my knowledge, so I started making smaller projects. Maybe you have a really cool idea, maybe you want to model a complex building or a city or a vehicle, but you're just not there in the modeling skills and you end up not being able to finish anything, or you finish the project but it looks like crap. So instead of feeling good for finishing a project, you actually beat up yourself because all this time invested didn't pay off, and then you close Blender forever. So what I started to do was writing those ideas that are too complex for my current skill level or even for the time I have now to practice 3D, and instead I make, for example, a still life render because it is a manageable project. I was doing a Grand Avid tutorial to get better at modeling, and I had these objects from those tutorials, a barrel and some bottles, so I decided to combine those elements into one render and make sense out of it. The lighting was also more manageable than lighting a whole city, for example, so I could dedicate time to make it look really good and detailed because I didn't have too much elements on the scene. How are you planning to learn how to light up a big scene, an environment, a city, if you can't make a small scene with fewer elements look good? By making a smaller, more manageable project, you give yourself the chance to actually finish your projects so you can practice the whole workflow: sketching, modeling, texturing, lighting, and post-processing. Also, this way I could have a finished piece to show on social media and to myself to see my progress. I encourage you to do this also, so basically simplify. Also find some decent references with nice lighting and color schemes, because this is why a lot of renders don't look good even if the modeling is okay. Learn how to use good references. Take the time to search projects that have something in common with your project. For example, for this render I looked for still life photos, paintings, and 3D renders. Some were completely different from the light or color scheme that I had in mind, and others were closer. That way you will have more clear what you want and what you don't want. Also, don't be scared of searching photographs as references, stills from movies or classic art. Classic art doesn't bite, and art has really good examples of lighting. And my final tip is to make a final analysis to the finished piece. Maybe after finishing the render, or maybe a couple of days or a week after, take the time to look at your render and think about the strengths and the weaknesses or things or skills to improve for your next project. Don't keep touching your final render, let that piece go. You can also analyze the direction of the lights and shadows because it can make or break the verisimilitude of an image or a scene. If you think the color scheme helps to build the mood you were going for, the modeling, the texturing. Sometimes we don't even want to look at our work because we are learning and we are mean to ourselves and too hard on ourselves. But if you don't look your work with a critic and a constructive eye, you might be making the same mistakes in each project and won't be able to top yourself. Don't beat up yourself, take it as part of the learning process. I hope these tips help you, and as always, you can find the lighting plot and the final image in my Instagram and a quick breakdown on my other YouTube channel. And make sure to subscribe to this channel if you want to take your renders to the next level while learning about light and color. Make sure to check out this channel next week because I'll be releasing a second part to this video, which is a simple post-processing process anyone can achieve. Bye.